The story with Atlantis is something went wrong in this one big mothership, which is pretty much a city that travels through space. There's cities traveling through space. You check the ancient Hindu texts and they'll tell you all about that stuff. But this city, something went wrong in their control room or something, and then they had to crash land on this Earth during the middle of the last ice age. So during the last ice age, there's just been a whole bunch of stuff, people coming in and kind of adding themselves to the Earth Human Project. Manipool. And I feel that Atlantis didn't land on purpose. So what they did is they picked out a spot on the Earth where they know, because they can see through the fourth dimension, right? I'll explain that later. But they picked out a spot where they knew the evidence will be hidden, so it will not interrupt the Earth Human Project. So they parked their city in a certain place and then opened up camp and started opening up other cities and getting some energy vortexes going using their psychotronic psychic technology, high alchemic technology, even cybernetic alchemic psychotronic technology. That stuff sounds really delicious. I'm into that, especially if it's working with nature, right? And what happened after they parked and started building up cities? They just added themselves. Somewhere in there was someone from far away, probably from the older galaxy that merged with this one, that started going around looking for potential Earths and leaving spores to promote larger diversity of life forms to be generated on those Earths. This is just a theory, but I have a theory that there's some older people from space that have already gone through a whole bunch of things, so they're at a very high, mature level of being sentient interdimensional life forms. And they supposedly went around first with special spores and started up big but genetic libraries on certain Earths to promote high diversities of life forms, to just promote more company. It's a part of that same expression coming from the source creator, noticing itself and then generating company, making 1 point to 2 points, giving you a two-dimensional space, and then the pattern keeps going. Just like the same way how the white light becomes a rainbow. And then later on, once you open up a possibility like that, you have us. So that being that we exist, we evolve and wind up going into outer space. And then being that happens, there's all these extra people from space that actually evolved from us as a result of this story taking place here. A bunch of them exist as a direct result of our existence. So pretty much you can expect them to not let us go extinct, obviously, and to find out who are the older ones traveling through space, starting up the projects, who's physically behind promoting all this beautiful blessings, so that the spirits would have grounds and a means to gain experience and grow. And so what I feel happened is people from Atlantis went out and started up other cities, but they picked out their spots special, knowing that those spots will be washed up, buried, or eventually underwater. They picked out specific spots to try to hide the evidence. In not all cases this is true, which is why you can find artifacts of high technological understanding. We still may not, we still don't know how to build a lot of these buildings and certain architectures of high technological awareness. But for the most part, most of those cities were placed in places where they knew that when the pole shift comes, the evidence would be mostly destroyed. The pole shift that I'm talking about happened some odd thousands of years ago. You'll hear about it in the story of Noah, that one supposedly crazy guy that built an ark, and he was getting messages from people from somewhere else, right? You see, the missing link, to find the missing link, is up. That's all it is. So anyways, Noah built the ark, and then the flood happened. That flood was as a result of a pole shift that was happening during that time, which the people from space that started up a bunch of camps, they knew that pole shift was going to happen and set up their cities in places where it's just going to be flooded. They already knew all those cities of all these really cool tribal people with all their really cool jewelry, and they're using stones and herbs, like all the things, all the nature things and spiritual things we know of today. We were once living like that while there were still woolly mammoths and Neanderthals were around. The modern day human was there, living in societies that had recipes to cook and do all these things, and kung fu, qigong, yoga, like all that stuff was already there. And then a big pole shift happened, and everyone had to go back to the spirit realm and continue the game of just reincarnating over and over again, living asleep and gaining the experiences needed to bring us to this stage that we're at right now. This stage that we're at right now, the next pole shift is coming, which means we supposedly just had enough time, a bunch of us had enough time to gain the karma needed to move to the next stage. A bunch of people haven't yet, so they'll make the correct decisions for them to gain the karma that's for them. And so, with the population of the world today, there's as much people alive today as much as there ever were people that lived. So in other words, karmically, everyone that once lived is, generally speaking, here today to witness each other, but to witness the event that I'm pretty much lecturing about. I'll continue in the next episode.